Chairman Thomas, Ranking Member Sonnenberg, and members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for this opportunity to provide opponent testimony on House Bill 338. My name is Gary Daniels. I'm here representing the ACLU of Ohio. As this committee knows, HB 338 is a direct response to the brutal and senseless killing of a corrections officer at Ross Correctional Institution in December 2024. As was expressed via sponsor testimony, HB 338 will reform Ohio's prisons and make them a much safer environment to work. However, HB 338 contains numerous provisions appearing to have nothing to do with this killing, nor do we predict they will make Ohio's prisons collectively safer. Ohio is already one of the very top incarcerators of people on the entire planet, and HB 338 further ratchets the punitive aspects of prisons at the expense of rehabilitation, a purported but often ignored goal of prisons in our state. More specifically, House Bill 338 does the following. It eliminates all higher education programs at all higher security prisons. It bans participation in vocational programs at higher security programs for anyone who has violated any conduct rules during the previous year. It requires all visitations at higher security prisons to be no contact. It bans individual use of tablets at higher security prisons and for those in restrictive housing. And it requires DRC to create and maintain a public registry of those who commit any sexual offenses while in prison, publish all the data involved regarding an offense on the DRC website, and keep all that data posted for 10 years after the offender's final discharge. Still unknown is any relationship between any of the above provisions in making Ohio's prisons safer and preventing any future killings. Indeed, the more likely outcome is people exiting Ohio's prison system less equipped to adjust to outside life, find employment, and keep themselves out of further trouble in returning to Ohio's prisons. In addition, HB 338 requires these changes and many more with apparently zero data discussed, received, or requested by this committee regarding the current prevalence of problems HB 338 addresses or their predicted impacts once enacted into law. That is, how often is violence targeted by HB 338 committed against prison staff? How often do people get caught smuggling contraband into prisons? And how often is it the result of prison staff, not visitors? What is the prevalence of prison staff being assaulted by or threatened with the throwing of an exposure to bodily substances? We understand some of you may be unbothered by this list of changes and sentencing enhancements found in HB 338. Nonetheless, these changes will still impact Ohio's prison population and the capacities of individual prisons as well as our youth system. After all, that's exactly what HB 338 is designed to accomplish. This is especially relevant because Ohio's prison system is over capacity and has been over capacity for decades. Currently, the budget for the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections is over $2 billion per year. As this committee knows, there are also notable shortages and vacancies in prison staff across DRC, and of course, the number one reason a person enters an Ohio prison continues to be for drug possession, as has been the case for many years now in a state that continues to embrace and perpetuate the thoroughly failed war on drugs. Some past prison directors would use this combination of factors to point out to the General Assembly their belief: we put too many people in Ohio's prisons for the wrong reasons, that the strains and stresses this places on the prison system and Ohio taxpayers could be minimized via a combination of comprehensive efforts to reserve prison sentences for those who are truly dangerous and a threat to public safety. In fact, if you look at written testimony for HB 88, a bill that was considered earlier in this committee, you'll see from former prison director Gary Moore saying exactly this with relation to HB 88. Occasionally, some legislatures would agree with this, leading to bills addressing these issues. Such rhetoric and responses now seem to be a distant memory. Whether or not one agrees with that assessment, it still appears HB 338 is on a path to become yet another law where it is never revealed, never asked what impact these changes will have. At a minimum, the ACLU of Ohio respectfully asks this committee to obtain and review this data, providing it even exists in all these instances, before rushing to pass yet another bill without examining and considering the financial, personal, and societal impact of these changes. The ACLU of Ohio further advocates for a narrower version of HB 338 that directly addresses issues of serious prison violence instead of a kitchen sink bill that dilutes the focus on the stated goal of reducing that violence and, we believe, contains various changes that will prove to be counterproductive. Making prisons safer for staff, visitors, and those incarcerated is a laudable goal. However, for the reasons listed and more, the ACLU encourages this committee's rejection of House Bill 338. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Daniels, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Sonnenberg with a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimony today, Mr. Daniels. Do you think that with the staffing issues that you mentioned and alluded to, as our population increases, are you in favor of, I think more funding? Is that, do you think we need to do that for in the short term, even if maybe long term the goal is to reduce the population?
Through the chair to Ranking Member Sonnenberg, yes, I mean, funding appears to be a major factor here. And it's essentially what I'm getting at when I talk about we've got a prison system that's over capacity for decades. The number one reason a person goes to prison is for drug possession. And if we can stop saying, look, we should stop incarcerating so many people for these reasons, because it's clearly not working, then the state of Ohio would have more money to concentrate on those true problems in prison, those safety issues, increasing pay for corrections staff that would hopefully allow people to be retained longer. I mean, the starting salary, it appears to me, to be a prison guard here in Ohio is between $24 and $25 an hour. I mean, you can go make that working at an Amazon warehouse, you can make that bartending, you can make it in a variety of other different ways. So it's no surprise when some people say, you know, I'd rather not deal with all that comes with being a corrections officer and go ahead and try some of these other jobs instead. You know, it becomes a real problem too if we get to the point where we start talking about building another prison or prisons. And this bill doesn't exist in a vacuum. House Bill 88, again, that bill that was considered earlier in this committee, is designed to put significantly more people in prison and have people there that are already there serve longer times. So, you know, we keep fueling the prison population, again, with classifications of people which not just the ACLU of Ohio says we shouldn't have in prison in the first place, but former prison directors, multiple former prison directors, saying that we need a change in how we are doing this, and that will free up some money. I mean, you know, if the state of Ohio can find, you know, millions of dollars to move a billionaire's football stadium somewhere else, I'm certain we can come up with the funding to more properly pay our corrections staff and DRC staff and take care of some of these very real problems that this committee has heard about throughout this hearing.
Follow up?
No, thank you.
Question? Representative Williams with a question.
Thank you for coming to testify today. It's hard to take some of your criticism serious when you made that last statement, and then I look at pictures of you with an Antifa shirt on at the No Kings rally. So I want to know, are you speaking on behalf of Antifa today or a separate organization like the ACLU?
Through the chair to Representative Williams, of course, as you know, Antifa is not an organization. Antifa stands for being against fascism, something I hope that we are all against.
Follow up?
Well, it seems like that organization was just classified as domestic terrorism, so it seems there is an organization. But part of your criticism here, especially when it speaks about like eliminating higher education programs, line 2330, banning participation in vocational programs for any conduct violation, those things have been addressed in the latest amendment. So are you removing the opposition that's based on those provisions? Are you adjusting it based on the new amendments that just came out? Are you revising your testimony based off of that?
Through the chair to Representative Williams, I have not seen those amendments. To my knowledge, they've not been publicly available. They were introduced and adopted by this committee, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes ago. I'll be happy to take a look at those amendments, but, you know, having not seen them previously because they've not been available, I cannot say exactly how it impacts our position on this bill. But the larger point still stands about putting too many people in prisons for the wrong reasons and how that impacts the entire system as a whole, leading to less funding for other crucial duties, activities, staff, and what have you when we're concentrating on these other things.
Follow up?
Thank you, Chair. So the amendment was made available. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It's been available before this committee. Committee members were privy to it, and it was open to the public beforehand. So I would advise you to take a look at that amendment. It addresses some of those concerns, especially about workforce development training. I had those similar concerns during the sponsor's testimony, and they've addressed those concerns with my office. And I appreciate them taking those into consideration. Additionally, though, you spoke earlier about putting people behind bars for drug cases, for drug possession, for trafficking. We also know that in other states where they essentially decriminalize the use of drugs, the number of overdoses have substantially increases, resulting in the loss of life. So if you don't want to put them in prison, what other alternative means do we have when people continuously get caught in possession of drugs, when people continuously get caught trafficking drugs, when people get caught trafficking drugs into our correctional institutions, which are driving the violent outbursts of inmates because of the prevalence of illicit drugs inside of our prisons? What's the solution that you propose other than putting a person in prison for doing those type of crimes? Is it just let them walk free all over again to reoffend? Let them walk free so they can overdose on our doorsteps? Like, what's the solution that the ACLU proposes through you?
Through the chair to Representative Williams, of course, it's a complex question with complex, multifaceted answer, but I will say, we've been trying to do this for at least half a century, and it's failed miserably. I can go a mile or two outside of this building and find essentially whatever drugs I want at a cheaper price than that has happened, than it's been available in the past, despite us for years now throwing this population of people in prison over and over again, to the extent we spend $2 billion per year, $2 billion plus dollars per year to do this, greatly impacting all kinds of things, not just the prison system and beyond. If we can, there's a lot of things that lead to addiction. Lack of education, lack of physical and mental health care, lack of jobs, lack of good paying jobs. That's the more macro, partial solution to all of this. Expanding treatment in rural areas. There are plenty of deserts in Ohio where treatment is just simply not available unless somebody drives a long distance, if they can get into treatment whatsoever because of long waits in various areas. Expand treatment options in prisons if necessary. But we have been trying to do this now for, again, at least 50 years. And there has been no noticeable or demonstrative improvement in this situation. And we think, there's been bipartisan agreement about this over the years in past General Assemblies, with bills taking a look and saying, okay, look, the number one reason a person goes to an Ohio prison is drug possession. If we want to talk about a good way to save money and relieve the burden on prison staff and DRC and administration and everything, why don't we start with that? But those attempts in the past, they've had limited success, ultimately not passed. We argue that even those attempts that were made via legislation were not adequate and comprehensive enough. But if this body is looking to either save money or reallocate DRC money, it seems that's a wise place to start, because people who go into prison for drug issues don't come out any better. And we certainly agree with Representative Stewart when he said, look, we talk about this all right now, but what happens after everybody leaves the committee room and time goes on? When budget season comes up next time, which will be here before we know it, unfortunately, will what's being discussed today be reflected in that budget? And we agree with Representative Plummer when he was saying earlier, we need more transparency in the system itself. There's a lot of data that is either not available or is extremely hard to get with regard to these problems, with regard to DRC. So certainly if anybody wants to work on transparency legislation, we're willing to do that too. We want to be part of the solution here. But, the war on drugs has been just an absolute failure.
Follow up?
Thank you. There was a lot to unpack there. Maybe we'll talk offline, but let's be clear. If the number one reason someone's going to prison is because of drug possession, that means they're a repeat offender, because the F4, F5 drug offense in the state of Ohio has a presumption of community control. That means they've already been convicted and placed on community control, and they're charged at least a second time before they ever even have a chance to make their way to prison. Plus, we've expanded alternatives like treatment in lieu of conviction, drug courts. We've expanded that. CBCFs, community-based correctional facilities that are treatment options. We've expanded that. In the budget, under the finance chair's leadership, we submitted for an 1115 waiver to allow Medicaid coverage in the last 90 days. We've tried that. We've done TCAP, where we pay counties not to put F4 and F5 offenders in prison. We've tried a lot of things as alternatives to carrying a big stick. But what I didn't hear is not a single proposed piece of legislation that the ACLU has gotten behind. Not one have you drafted. I've never seen a bill drafted by your organization to attack any of those issues that you so eloquently tried to place at the feet of the legislature. And I don't know what type of circles you move in, but I'm in Columbus almost every single week. I can go 15 miles around here. I wouldn't know a single place to get drugs. So maybe avoid the people that are at the No Kings rally and stick to people that are in a better circle. But the question is, what proposals do you actually have that are shown by statistical data to have outcomes other than just coming to oppose legislation that we believe is a solution to put people behind bars, especially for taking drugs into our prisons? So what proposals do you actually draft other than just being opponents to legislation that's rooted in good research that I've seen?
Through the chair to Representative Williams, I've been here for a lot of years. We have, in fact, supported legislation to reduce these problems. SB 3 is a real good example of that. Senate did its job on a bipartisan basis and passed that bill, stalled out over here. The then House Speaker, a Republican, refused to bring that bill for a vote on the House floor out of fear that, in fact, there was enough votes to pass that. If you or any member of the committee or the General Assembly want to work on legislation to address these issues, I will absolutely reach out, legislator reach out to us, what have you. We want to be part of the solution. So if we're talking about proactive ways to reduce these problems and find solutions, absolutely we would like a seat at that table, Representative.
One follow-up. I'm not asking for your support on legislation that I design. I'm asking for one single piece that you draft yourself to show that this is the way you would solve it. And I haven't seen anything from you since I've been in the legislature. So I'm not asking for your support on legislation that we draft. I'm saying if you believe that everything that we're doing is bad unless it's exactly aligned with what your beliefs are, you know how to draft legislation. It's the ACLU, for God's sakes. You know the law, so draft it and bring it to us. But I haven't seen one proposal from your organization in my 3 years of being here.
Through the chair to Representative Williams, we'll get you that information. I'll get you a whole host of ideas, legislative ideas about how to improve these problems.
Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.